Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. My name is Angie Bailey on behalf of the Miramar Pembroke Pines Regional Chamber of Commerce, Weston Florida Chamber of Commerce, and the Pembroke Park West Park Chamber of Commerce. We're glad that you could take some time this morning to join us and talk about emotional intelligence, which is so important in how we deal with everybody in our daily lives. And with us today presenting the topic is Nathalie Delaine. She is a mindfulness life coach, celebrated for bringing her clients a profound sense of clarity and self-connection. With her caring and compassionate approach, she helps individuals navigate through overwhelming and discover their inner strength. She is an astute listener, creating a safe space where clients feel truly heard and supported on their transformative journeys. Her unique blend of mindfulness practices and soul work empowers her clients to overcome challenges and unlock their whys, which is so important. And the whole reason that we get up every morning is in pursuit of our whys. So, Miss Nathalie, kicking it off to you.
Thank you, Angie. It was nice to hear that out loud. I've never heard that out loud. It made me like, oh yes, let's do it. So guys, welcome. Good morning. Thank you for being with me. Today, we're going to be talking about emotional intelligence and this superpower that we all kind of have. Some of us don't know we have it. Some of us tap into it a little bit, but we're going to get into all the hows and whys. But before that, I'm going to share a little bit about myself with you from my words. And even before that, today is 9/11, and as a New Yorker, an ex-New Yorker, I just want to take a moment of silence to just honor what we lost that day and the people and everything, because it is a very important day. And I had just graduated college, and it was a very scary time, seeing everybody come home full of dust and everything. But as a New Yorker, getting into my backstory, I was never happy. I could never sustain my happiness. I was always on the go, working 80 hours in 1 week. I couldn't do it. And I moved to Florida, and something amazing happened. I could hear my heart. And from that, I started hearing what my needs were, what my desires were. And I went into the whole transformational route, books, courses, you name it, I did it. And then I became a life coach, a certified life coach, because if I could transform the life in the way that I did, I was like, I can help others. And that's what led me here to you guys today. So let's get started on the beautiful thing. Thank you for those that shared some emojis. For those that joined a little bit later, if you want to share some emojis that represent what mood you're in right now, please go ahead and do that in the chat, and we'll get started. So, good, the screen changed. Defining emotional intelligence. What is it? So a lot of people, and it's two things too. Some people abbreviate it EI and some people abbreviate it EQ, and it's the same thing. I don't know why they have two different forms of abbreviating. EI is the emotional quotient, and EQ is the emotional quotient. EI is emotional intelligence, but it means the same thing. So essentially, it's the ability to understand and manage our own emotions and recognize that they have influence on the world around us, especially people around us. A lot of times people think that this is something that's outside of them, but it's quite the opposite. It's managing and recognizing our own emotions and how that affects our surroundings. I love to first talk about what it is before we get into it, because it's quite confusing. And looking at the slides, there's a level of self-awareness that comes with EQ. You know, when we know what we're feeling, what we're experiencing on the inside, it's so much easier to communicate, connect, and be who we truly are. Self-regulation, which we're definitely going to get into today. When we are aware of what's going on underneath, so I woke up today, let's take Andy's example. I didn't sleep well. I'm a little edgy. I'm a little irritable. I've been snapping at my partner, snapping at the kids, snapping at the dog. If I'm not aware of that underneath, I'm experiencing irritability, how can I regulate that, right? So when you have the self-awareness, we can then regulate what's going on, and doing it to ourselves is so magical and important. Having a sense of empathy, and I love this, right? When we can tap into what we're experiencing in terms of an emotional standpoint, we can also tap into what other people's experience and feelings are too. And I talked about this briefly, social skills. When we are in such a great awareness of what's going on in our inner landscape, it's easier for us to connect, communicate, and be around our loved ones, our coworkers, our family. It just really helps. Thank you for joining, Paola. I want to quickly talk about what EQ isn't, because there's a huge controversy around this. So EI I'm just going to use EI for the rest of the conversation today. EI is not like a cure-all answer to all the questions. Sometimes people are like, well, if you can't figure it out, let's just look at it from an EI standpoint. It's not that. I wish it was that simple, but it isn't. It's also not about suppressing your emotions, right? So I'm really angry today, but I can't show it because I have a meeting. I have to go pick up the kids. I have a dance workshop, but I have all this anger inside. It's not suppressing the emotion that you're experiencing. It's becoming aware of it. It's not letting it control your day, but suppressing our emotions, it's definitely not what EI is about. It's not about how we control others, right? So we can't go around saying, well, I'm experiencing anger because you didn't do ABC, and now I'm not going to go out with you tonight or whatever it is. EI is not about controlling others with this knowledge and awareness that we have inside. It's mostly, when I say sales, it's not a way to like produce sales, meaning it's not a way to say, oh, because I'm feeling XYZ, I'm going to persuade you to also feel this way and buy from me. And I don't necessarily mean buy with money. I just mean buy into whatever it is that I'm talking about. Lastly, EI is not something that can be taught. And this is kind of interesting. It can be fostered, but it can't necessarily be taught. Meaning most people, when we don't have the awareness of what's going on in our inner landscape, it's hard to have that without first building that skill of the awareness. So has anyone ever experienced something and had huge emotions and realized that your EI kind of helped you in the past in any kind of situation? You can raise your hand or put in the chat a thumbs up or a thumbs down if this has ever happened to you. And if you want to share, please feel free to unmute. Yeah. Perfect. Thank you, Angie. Let's go in. All right, next slide. Perfect. I get this question all the time. Well, Natalie, how do I know where I am? Where do I stand with my EI? I love this question. There's three main things that help with this. Self-reflection, and this is huge. I'm a mindfulness life coach, so everything I kind of do is based in mindfulness, which means right now, not reminiscing or ruminating about the past or worrying about tomorrow and the future, but right now, like coming into the present moment. And when we reflect and take some time, and I have some questions here on the slide that are super key, taking time to reflect to ourselves about ourselves is a great way to kind of see where we are with our EI. Feedback from others, asking. And especially with our partners. Hey, partner, I'm sorry about getting angry this morning, but do you have any feedback? How often does this happen? How often do I show up in anger? Asking for feedback from the people that we love is a great way to tap in where we are with our EI levels. But lastly, there are quick tests, and we're going to take one now. I'm going to post the link in the chat. So please take a moment, click on that link. It's really short and cute and sweet, but I want you guys to kind of get some feedback on where your EI stands right now. Click on the link and I'll do it with you guys. I'm going to put a timer for 3 minutes and 20 seconds because it shouldn't take you that long. But let's go ahead and do this together right now, because for me, it's super important to kind of get a gauge on where we feel our emotional intelligence is. So does everybody have the link and have it open, ready to go? Just thumbs up or nods, perfect. Okay, great. I'm gonna start the timer. I'm gonna play some music in the background. So let's go ahead and take that test. When you are done taking the test, give me a thumbs up in the chat so that I know that we're all on the same page. We have about 1 minute left for those of you that are still taking the test. Right, so what, if you don't mind sharing, what were some of your scores? And more importantly, do you agree, like how accurate do you feel the score? I know it was a quick test. This doesn't mean it's right or wrong, but it was a quick exercise to kind of gauge where you are today. Based off your score, how do you feel? Do you agree? Hi, Sandy.
Hi.
Were you going to share about your score?
Yes, echo. I got a 92. Um, and I think just to say it's been years to get here because I wasn't, if I would have taken this test 5 years ago or 10 years ago, it probably would have been a 50. So self-awareness and self-reflection has been, so I was surprised that I got 92, but I could see that the work has been there with struggles and setbacks, not perfect straight line. So yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. That is really high. I'm very proud of you too. And it's never a straight line, especially when we're working on ourselves. There's always curves, but you guys got really good scores. I see 60s, 80s, 80s. I'm really happy. Take this test and keep it. There are more longer detailed tests. I just wanted to quickly do this with you here. We don't have a lot of time today, but take this and kind of grow with it. At the bottom, it'll give you some more feedback, but I'm really glad 70s. Guys, I'm really happy. So not to say that low EI and high EI doesn't really matter, but it sounds like most of us have a higher quotient than we thought, which is beautiful. So let's keep on going. Thank you for sharing, everybody. Let's talk about emotional triggers. And this is a huge thing. And firstly, what are emotional triggers? They are situations or experiences or events that evoke strong emotions in us. And when I mean strong, I mean the ones that you lose it, you're just yelling, like strong, strong, strong emotions that arise from an event, a person, a situation. That's what an emotional trigger is. And why is it important for us to kind of tap in and check on our emotional triggers? The reason is they're kind of like our signs. They're kind of like, when we're driving red, green, red, green, and yellow. It's the same thing. When we have emotional triggers, they're like a quick moment to kind of look in, if you choose to, right? If you want to be in that moment of self-reflection. But it's so, so, so important because it helps us react differently. It gives us a moment to pause before losing our ish, yelling, screaming, cursing, doing the things that we don't like to do. I'm gonna do a quick poll because I have a question here for everybody, just so that we can get a gauge. Give me a second to find the polls. So do you see the poll that popped up? It says, how confident are you in your ability to identify and understand your emotional triggers? Take a moment and put in your answers. Well, that's really good. You guys are great. You're an easy group to work with. So we have pretty much a tie between very confident and somewhat confident. And I love that. And one thing I didn't talk about, but when we have an emotional trigger, sometimes they cause us to react in a way that's unhelpful. And I think that's why I really like to talk about this, because we don't want to show up in a way and be unhelpful. We will, with our emotional intelligence, we want it to be the opposite, in fact, right? We want to open the lines to communication. We want to open connection with others instead of being unhelpful. Thank you for sharing. So we have 50-50, very confident and somewhat confident, but I love that. If you have a notebook in front of you, take it out. I meant to say that at the beginning. We're going to do another quick little exercise. It's going to help us kind of tap into what your personal emotional triggers are. Because another thing is we all have different ones. Something that will make me react in one way will not make Richie or Nicole react in the same way. So tapping into what our specific triggers are is another beautiful way of like expanding our emotional EQ. So I'm going to ask you to think of a recent moment when you felt that strong emotion, like anger, frustration, strong anxiety, and then write down, if you have a piece of paper in front of you or on your computer, what happened? What was the event? It can be my sister stormed off on me when I was trying to give her feedback about her children, right? So think about the event. What was the event that caused this strong emotion inside of you? I'll give you a minute to write that down. The second part, what was the emotion, right? Try to identify what the emotion was during that event that occurred. So if an example of my sister, walking out on me, I felt disrespected, like supremely disrespected that she didn't give me the moment to talk. And here's the key. What caused the emotion? So for me in this example, I felt like my voice didn't matter. And at the end of that, it just feels like I don't matter, right? And so again, this is all an example, but tap into what caused the emotion to arise from the situation. Another example could be, I felt frustrated when a colleague interrupted me during a work meeting. Again, the trigger is I felt disrespected. So tapping into these triggers is so, so, so amazing. Does anybody want to share an example of what came up from the brief exercise? You can just unmute and share if you want.
I will. So the last time that I kind of had an emotional reaction, I found out that someone was talking badly about me to somebody in my inner circle. And I felt hurt and my ego was bruised and I felt angry. And I felt that way because the thought of someone thinking something badly of me and something that was incorrect really bothered me. So that was the last time that I kind of was triggered.
Mm-hmm. And so the emotion was hurt. And so this is a beautiful example, observing how you react. So the next time something like this happens and you feel that hurt, you can kind of connect the pieces. When X happens, I experience B, and then I act in this way, right? But the more that we become aware of what our triggers are, we can adjust the reaction. So, and I'm not saying that you reacted badly or that you cursed them out or that you tripped them down the hall, which I hope none of, I was gonna say, I hope none of us do because we're too old for that. But we get those impulses. We're all human. We get those impulses. So becoming aware of our triggers is so important in identifying them because they happen often. And if we start to become aware, we'll see that there's patterns. And then observing what happens to our bodies, to our minds. What's happening when this thing is occurring? That's another way of kind of being able to recognize and take a breath. We're going to get into this next, but developing coping mechanisms. How do you cope when you find out that someone's speaking about you disrespectfully and it's not even true, right? Like that's the worst part. Like if you're going to speak about me, at least say facts. Don't just come up with X, Y, Z. Just
Oh, Natalie, I think you got muted.
Okay. How do we develop coping mechanisms to deal with these reactions that we have? And one thing I didn't say at the beginning, having these strong emotions is perfectly okay. I'm not saying that it's not okay for you to have these reactions and these strong emotions, because we are human and life happens and life continues to happen. So when we have a trigger, we have a strong emotional reaction, that is perfectly okay. What we're working on is how do we kind of make the reaction easier, nicer, gentler with compassion. That's the piece that we're going to get into. For some people that have really, really, let's say, violent or very physical triggers, you can also seek emotional support, support with therapists, support with coaches, support with just someone that you feel really safe with. I just want to mention that. I have two other exercises that I want to mention really quick that tap into emotional triggers and identifying them. If you're interested in having them, put a little thumbs up on your screen or in the chat, and then I'll send them to Angie and she can send them in thumbs up. Perfect. Thank you, Gus. Thank you for being here. I'm going to send those two little exercises. Thank you, Marie. Angie will share them with you because, again, identifying what our triggers are is step number one. Without that, we don't know how to kind of navigate afterwards. So moving on. And I love this part. So building emotional resilience. And what does that mean? Perfect. Everyone's saying yes to the exercises. I'm so happy. No worries about coming in late. I'm glad everyone's here. You know, how do we build emotional resilience? So yes, when X happens, I get irritable. When I'm irritable, nobody likes to be around me, including myself. So how do I build kind of resilience to work past these triggers? One of the first things is self-care practices. And as a mindfulness life coach, I do this all the time for me, and I encourage the people around me to do it too. And it's taking a walk, exercising, going swimming, eating apples instead of chocolate, right? Like building things that add value to my body and to my spirit instead of breaking it down. Because when we're taking really good care of our bodies, everything else is so much easier. Positive reframing. A lot of us don't realize that our internal dialogue is so negative and sometimes mean. I catch myself. There are times that what I'm saying to myself is so mean and judgmental. And it's like, wow, calm down. So how do we reframe our inner dialogue into a positive manner? Supportive networks, right? Finding people that understand you, that listen to you, that help you feel seen and feel witnessed. That's an important piece to building this resilience. And mindfulness and acceptance. And acceptance is huge here. When we realize that we have certain emotional triggers, trying not to see them isn't the answer. Become accepting. Okay, I am just an irritable person when X, Y, and Z happen. Take ownership of that. Accept that that's your emotional trigger, because the more you try to ignore it, the louder that behavior becomes. But it's a whole nother topic. But I did want to quickly share this. When we accept what our triggers are, it's easier to work with it instead of constantly like being in a state of, oh, I hate that part of me, right? Which we all have. But I want to kind of focus on the positive reframing because this is one of my favorite things to do as a coach. So what do I mean by that? Let's grab my screen. I'm gonna have some examples and give you how I reframe them. I failed at this task. I'm not good enough. And how many times have any of you thought or said that to yourselves? I do. Especially when I have perfectionism problem. When I don't do something right the first time, I'm like, I'm not good enough. I didn't do this right. I definitely experienced that. How do we reframe something like that in our minds? I can learn from this and do better next time. Like that to me is such a huge shift. And when we start speaking to ourselves in a manner that's compassionate, caring, and loving, so much is possible, especially, right, building this emotional resilience. Another example, nothing ever goes right for me. I tried to get a new car, it didn't work. I tried to get it low and I got denied. Nothing ever goes right for me. How do we reframe something like this? I like saying, I've had successes before and I will succeed again. And when I tell you that this has changed my life, because I have succeeded before and I've succeeded many times, we just tend to forget the moments that we succeed versus the moments that we've had challenges or failed in our line of, in the way we see failure. People don't like me because I'm too quiet. That's not true for me, but I know some people in my life that they think this all the time. So another way of reframing that is being quiet is a strength. I don't need to change who I am. So with these examples, can you kind of see where I'm going with positive reframing of our inner dialogue? You can give me a thumbs up or some emojis. whichever thumbs up. Thank you guys, you're so good at this. And next slide. And it's not working, give me a second. All right. Sorry. Okay, so here is something that I really want you guys to walk away with today. And if it's anything, it's this. How do we self-regulate when we are experiencing these triggers? And sometimes when we are in an emotional trigger, we get blinded, right? Let's take anger because it's the easiest for us to understand. Sometimes when I get angry, I see red. My ears are hot. I just want to like blow lasers out of my eyes. I wish I could, but I can't. But right, like when we get into these emotional triggers, we get blinded. So how do I self-regulate? One of the biggest things is breathing. And Sandy's also a coach and a therapist. Our breath is beyond powerful. When we take deep breaths, and I don't mean like, right? I mean a deep breath that goes into your diaphragm and into your lower belly. When we take a breath like that, we instantly connect to our being, we release tension, and it just oxygen enters our brain and relaxes us. So breathing is such an amazing technique to when we're having these emotional triggers, take a breath. If you need to walk away, go to the bathroom, take a deep breath. Breath is so amazing in a million ways to help us with our triggers. Ooh, muscle relaxation. I forgot about this one. But when I do meditations for people, we go through a whole series of relaxations, and I tend to start with the feet all the way up. But what we can do is scrunch your feet up into little balls, really, 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 really tight for 2 seconds, and then relax them, right? And then do the same thing with your whole leg. Extend your leg and like kind of tense it up, tense it up, tense it up, and then release. And the same thing with your arms, with your hands, with your face even, right? When we go through our bodies and release that muscular tension, there's a sense of, oh, okay, I can return to myself. I can breathe again. And it's a very powerful tool. Journaling. I am a big fan of writing. I've been writing since I was 6 years old. But when we journal and we get to express the things that we don't verbally say and we can write it down on paper, it is such a freeing experience. It's also a way to kind of get all those things out. I was so angry at my sister today, blah, 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 you know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You can, it's your journal. You can write whatever you want. If you want to curse someone out, you can do it on paper. If you want to forgive somebody, you can do it on paper. If you want to forgive yourself, you can do that on paper. So journaling is such a powerful tool to get all of these emotions that are swirling in your mind and in your body out on paper. And there's such a sense of relief when it happens. And the last one, meditation. Obviously, I love meditation. I'm a mindfulness life coach, but meditation helps in 1,000 ways. We regulate our breathing. We regulate our whole cardiovascular system. Meditation helps us come back into this present moment that for me is when all the magic happens. When we forget about yesterday and stop worrying about tomorrow, we come into the right now. And that's what meditation teaches us. And a lot of us have this misconception that meditation is about clearing our minds. Sure, that's a part of it when we get good at it, but it's mostly about remembering and coming back to right now. And even if you have to constantly do that, that's where the magic of meditation is. Realizing, oh, wait, I'm supposed to be meditating, but I'm thinking about laundry, I'm thinking about dinner, I got to pick up the dog. Oh, no, I'm meditating. Come back to the moment. I just got a thumbs up for that. That's where that magic is. The more we practice coming back to the present moment, it teaches us. It's such an amazing teacher. And I love meditation, and I meditate every day. It's become a part of my practice. So I have another poll question for you guys. Give me a second to get back to the, if you only saw how many screens I have open right now. Okay, so poll number 2, can you see it? I just launched it. The question is, which self-regulation technique do you find the most challenging to implement? And go ahead and take a moment to answer. Wow, this is great. Okay, I was gonna say it was an exact tie. When we're done, I'll share the results. So actually, mindful breathing. got the most, the highest answer, meaning that that's the most difficult for people to implement. And if you don't mind sharing, for those of you that answered this one, and here, let me end the poll and share it so you guys can see it. Can you unmute and explain what challenges you have with the mindful breathing, or any questions that you may have that I can help with? And you know what I find? A lot of people just don't make the time to do this. And if that's you, you can raise your hand, right? Like, you're busy, you're doing a million things a day. I don't make time to just sit and breathe. Sandy, did you want to say something?
Well, as it is really hard, even if you practice mindfulness and breathing, it's always going to be challengeable. So for me, when I start thinking about the laundry, I always say there's never a finished lane. It's just basically showing up. And when I do the breathing, I just go back to breathing. Like, I will think about the laundry and I will think about 100 things. And what I anchor myself is breathing and going back to the breathing. Because what happens, we get frustrated because we think about the laundry and then we quit. So just say to yourself, it's okay, and let me breathe in and breathe out again. So that's how I, deal with those challenges.
Thank you, Sandy, for sharing. And you used an amazing word that I love. She used the word anchor. She anchors back into her breath, meaning the anchor is a thing that she continuously comes back to. And anchors can be different. Some people use mantras. I am whole. I am whole. I am whole. And you repeat a mantra, and that's the thing you keep coming back to. Some people use breath, like feeling the cold air enter your nostrils, and that's what they keep anchoring back to. So thank you, Sandy, for sharing. And it is difficult to breathe. And one of the things, when some of us and most of us experience anxiety, what happens? We have shallow breath. We're just breathing right here. And that's never good for our bodies and our system. So thank you for sharing your feedback. I hope that some of you will breathe a little bit more. Maybe, I'll also share some breathing techniques in the email, because if this is what got the most results, that's the most difficult, I'm happy to share that. And it's a journey. We'll get into that, but there's never an easy answer for all of it. So putting this all together, right? Practicing these types of things on a daily basis. And I know we're all really busy humans, including myself, but coming back to the awareness, which is one on the first slides, when we are aware of what we're experiencing inside in the emotion space, when we're then aware of our triggers, it creates space. It creates space for us to choose. Well, either I can call my sister and curse her out, or I can go and take a breath, realize, is she really just trying to not listen to me, or am I just overreacting to this trigger? Right? So practicing these kinds of things on a daily basis is so impactful. Asking for feedback. And this is a hard thing, but I actually just started this in this way. Hey, Valerie, my sister, do you mind if I ask you for feedback right now? And then I ask her my question. And sometimes it's hard, especially with our loved ones. But when we ask for feedback, we get a mirror. We get to see how we are to the others. We get to see how we react to others. And it's such a powerful tool. So celebrating progress. And this is one of my favorite things, especially as a life coach. Like I love when my clients come up with this idea or succeed on a goal, or like when we celebrate our wins, even if they're this tiny, it gives our body memory. Oh yes, I did do this. I did succeed at this. And it also motivates us to keep going. And that's why it's so important to celebrate our progress. And even our tiny wins, celebrate yourself, because no one else knows how hard you worked other than you. So that's huge. Being curious and continuing to learn. This is huge, Violet's son. This is huge. This isn't something that's going to be mastered in a day. But I gave you lots of tools today. Start practicing some of them, and practice every day. Well, how am I feeling today? Having morning check-ins with yourself. Oh, and I'm going back to Angie's example. I didn't sleep very good today. Why am I just snapping at everybody? Oh, I'm experiencing irritability. And from there, you can reframe the entire day. You can cancel some meetings if you're able to. You can decide to have coffee if you really need it. Again, so the reason that we work on emotional intelligence is so that we can react and show up in a different way. We can choose how to react in a different way. Next, the why, and I love talking about this. And Angie mentioned it earlier. Why? Why do we want to work on our EI? Why do we care? Why do we want to learn what our triggers are? And it's because fundamentally, all humans want connection. We all want to be loved. We all want to be seen. We all want to be hugged. And the why, when we are good about checking in, seeing how we're doing in an emotional landscape, our connections to our families, our friends, our coworkers, even there's no milkman anymore, even the mailman, right? Like it makes everything feel better, more connected, more whole. And I really wanted to like bring this home and bring it into the why. When we can manage our own emotions, everything becomes kind of easier. And sometimes we're running on a story that's caused an emotion that's not even real. Going back to reframing some of our negative thoughts, right? If you're constantly thinking, well, I'm not good enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not good enough, how are you showing up in the world? Are you cranky? Are you irritable? Are you just angry and yelling at everybody? So managing these emotions for yourself and self-regulating them is such an amazing tool because it allows this space to connect with the people that we really care about. Social skills in general, as it says here, when we become good at acknowledging and recognizing our own emotional landscape, we slowly start to become really good at recognizing what's also going on around us. And that's an amazing skill because then you can easily relate to others in like a deeper way, not just a surface way, which again, going back to connecting and being in connected relationships. Alrighty, next slide. So today we covered some fun things. I hope it was fun and kind of interactive because I don't like to just sit here and talk the whole time. But we kind of went over what EI is. Does anybody want to summarize what they gathered about what EI is? You can type it or you can unmute yourself. So it's being aware of our inner landscape, our emotional landscape, and how we react to events and others around us. And then being able to manage our emotions. And I like to say that it's a superpower because it's something that can be underneath and kind of going on in the background, but it's keeping us more level instead of like going through all these spikes in the day of different emotions. And to me, that's kind of a superpower. Gus wrote, very important part of what people see you as. Yes. Yeah. If you're constantly showing up as angry, what are people's perceptions of you? And not that perceptions are always important, but if you're a manager and you're showing up in anger, what are people's perceptions of you? Do they think you're approachable? Probably not. Do they think you're an effective leader? Probably not. So that is really important. Charles wrote, having an awareness of the options, feelings, actions, and events around us. Yes, and it promotes love and inner peace 1,000%. Second, we kind of went through some of the tools that we can use: breathing, journaling, meditating, going for a walk, stepping away. I mentioned it a couple times, but there is such an immense power when we just step away for a moment. It can really, really give us the breath and the pause that we need before we react in a harmful way to someone, and sometimes even to ourselves. I want to encourage you guys to continue on this EI journey. I gave you that short link with the cute kind of short assessment of what your score is, but there are free tools out there that are much longer and much detailed to kind of give you a score, like a more detailed score, and then knowing where you are on that scale can kind of help you grow and continue to learn. I also really want to encourage everybody to use some of these self-regulation tools, especially the ones that, and let's just go to the mindful breathing. That one, if that one seems to be the most difficult for everyone, I strongly encourage you guys to try it. Something that I do with my clients is I have them put one hand on their chest and one on their stomach, so that when they breathe in, they can feel the air and their stomachs expand. That's how you know you actually have a deep breath, when you can feel your entire abdomen expand, that's a deep breath. And so many of us are shallow breathers. Like we just go to here and that's it. So I highly encourage you guys to continue. Does anybody have any questions or insights that they want to share?
I I definitely want to encourage everybody to ask their questions. And to that end, I'll kind of get the ball rolling. One thing that I remember when we watched the Olympics this summer is seeing that a lot of the athletes were using breathing to self-regulate before their events. And they were even starting to talk about how they were using this form of breathing that kind of mimics the way that a child cries. A lot of like, and then long breaths out, and how that was so helpful to regulate the stress and all the, the energy that they have bottled up before they're going out to their event. So I found that so interesting. And I bet that if you send us some of those examples of breathing techniques, I'm sure that one's in there. But they brought it up several times in the Olympics, and that was super, interesting. I kind of made a mental note of that one to just pretend like I'm crying if I want to de-stress. I don't know.
But I get you.
The thing that I do want to ask, since you kind of gave us some tips about how to regulate our own, emotions, do you have any sort of little tidbits on how to deal with other people who may be exhibiting signs of low emotional intelligence? Like, how do you deal with that?
Yes, a couple ways. The first, asking if that person is open to receiving feedback. So let's say I'm talking to my manager. This is my manager, Bob. I'm making this up. Bob, are you open to receiving feedback? And with the intention of telling him that every time you come and ask him for clarity, he gets really mad at you, right? So ask the person if they're open to receiving feedback is huge, because a lot of people don't don't want to. So allowing and asking that question is so powerful because it already opens them up. And then hopefully if they say yes, you can ask your question. Well, when I do this, you get really angry and it doesn't foster a good relationship, etc. Whatever. But so that's number one. Number two, the walking away. And I know that it's hard because sometimes it's our loved ones. But the walking away is so powerful. Because it gives you that break, it gives them a break, and then you can kind of recalibrate yourself, right? Another thing is sharing, this is gonna sound silly, but sharing these quizzes with those people. Because, and going back to my first or second slide, the self-awareness. Some people are just not self-aware about anything. So slowly introducing them to a new topic so they can become curious, and then they can say, oh wow, I really never pay attention when Angie comes to me this way. Or I don't care when Angie comes to me in this way, right? Starting to create that self-awareness. So giving them these cute little assessments might be a good, and like in a fun way, be like, hey, let's do this together. So it doesn't feel like you're judging that person, right? Make it fun, which I always find a way to do. But I hope that answers your question. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. And going back to the breathing with the Olympics, yes, like breath. And I talked about this, breath is beyond powerful in thousands of ways, but what it does too for a lot of people, you mentioned the word release stress, relieve stress. It also just opens up in our brain pathways that weren't there or accessible. And when we open up these pathways in our brain, it just gives us space for whatever is next, a difficult conversation, a long drive, a hard task. So when I say that breath is so powerful, and maybe we'll do another one of these just on breath work because I love it. It is so powerful. So thank you for bringing that example. Does anybody else have any questions? Oh, yes. When someone asks you a question you do not want to answer, but they get mad because you don't, but they will not like the answer if you do. Thank you for sharing. This is a tough one. So saying no, I teach a lot of my clients how to say no. And saying no is a right that we all have, but we're not good at because we weren't taught this. Well, many of us weren't taught this. So if someone asks you a question and you know that they're going to get mad, you can say, I'm not able to answer that right now, but can we revisit this conversation tomorrow? Because if you can gauge where they are openly or emotionally, right? If you can already see that they're in an agitated state, you definitely don't want to share the answer, right? So gauge first how that person's doing in their own emotional landscape, and then you can say no gently. Thank you for asking. I'm not able to answer that right now, but can we revisit this tomorrow over breakfast? Right? And having a buffer. When we're giving people news that they don't want to hear, and having like a breakfast or a buffer is so helpful. Sandy, it looks like you unmuted. Did you want to share something?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I did that first.
Okay, and then to answer that question, we have no control over the emotions of others. I didn't talk about that today, but this is huge. We have no control, right? So if you know this person's gonna get mad, try different language, different words to see if it helps. But at the end, you have no control over how this person's going to react. And if you deliver the message with compassion, and that's something that I'm very, very passionate about, there's she has to hear, she has to hear it. So finding a way to deliver with compassion and remembering that you have no control over how they're going to react. And you can even say that and say, I'm not sharing this to make you react in a negative way. However, XYZ. Does that help? Okay. Any other questions? What are some of the methods or ideas for breath? I will send that. Any other questions relating to how's what? Ooh, Maya, yes.
I have a question. Yeah, just because I'm dealing with something very similar to what we're talking about. My question is, how do you differentiate between, okay, this person is emotionally unintelligent, and they're very reactive. How do you determine if it's a conversation like worth having, or just deciding, like you said, to walk away? Like, I'm kind of having trouble with determining that.
Which route to go? That is a fantastic question. Thank you for sharing. So ultimately, going back to what I just said, you have no control over the other people's emotions or actions for that matter. Determining what's more valuable to you, Maya. So if you have conversation with X person because you felt that it was important to your value system to share that information, do it, regardless of what the outcome is. If it's better for your peace and state of mind to walk away and let it go, then do that route. Like what I'm asking you to do is check in with you to see where you would receive the most value. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, actually.
Because our hearts and our inner knowing already has that answer. It's that our minds try to like make it work, make it work, make it work. But listen to your heart space and see which one would add you the most value and peace.
Right. Thank you. I appreciate
You're
it.
welcome. My pleasure. There's one more question. Okay, we have a little bit of time. How do you deal with someone that is very defensive on any subject? Ooh, I got some of those people in my life too. So going back to asking people if they're open to having a certain conversation, if they're open to having certain feedback, like inviting the conversation instead of just talking. It releases this like level of stress and anxiety, and it kind of brings them down a notch. And you too, which is beautiful. So I would definitely try that, right? Asking. So and so, I would love to talk about what happened yesterday. Do you have a moment to do that now? Right? Or whatever it is that's going on. So asking for them if they're open to this space. If someone is always defensive, and it's someone that you get to deal with, there's two options. You share with them that it's difficult to interact with you because this happens, this happens, this happens, and there's no resolution, right? Like come to the why it's hard when they get defensive. There's no resolution at the end of this. Or same that I said to Maya, if it's easier for you to do it and handle it on your own, sometimes that's also the answer. But people that are very self-defensive are very hurt. And so going back to the compassion, right? And I know that it's hard, but when you have a higher EI, you can give this compassion easier, right? So having this compassion, and if someone is constantly self-defensive, think about, okay, what's making them like this? How can I approach them about this topic we need to talk about with some compassion? And it is difficult regardless. So I can understand. Any other questions?
This has been so amazingly helpful. I think this is something that affects every single person, whether or not they realize it or not. So having the skills to deal with your own emotional intelligence, recognize your triggers, and then identify those things in the other people that you deal with every day is super, super important. So Nathalie, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
We're gonna have this online pretty soon. We'll send it out to everybody and share the word of emotional intelligence. So Nathalie, thank you so much, and thank you
You're
all of you
welcome.
for joining us as well.
Yeah, really quickly, I just added my Instagram link to the chat. So please go ahead and follow me if you have Instagram. Let me also put my email if it's something private. I love talking and guiding people, obviously. But if you have conversations, questions, or thoughts that you want to share individually, please email me and we can schedule a time to talk. And going back to this practice, if the more we practice these things on our own, as it goes with healing, when you start healing yourself, the people around you automatically start to feel it. And this is similar. When we practice these tools, when we practice regulating our triggers that we've now identified as triggers, so much is possible. So I'm so happy that it was useful. You guys are wonderful, very engaging. And thank you, Angie, and the Chambers.
Thank you all so much.